Good evening. Check, 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 check. All right, gonna give it another minute before we get a few more people time to come on in here. All right, we're gonna have a lot to talk about on this subject. I touched up on it a little bit, but now as time's passed along, I've had more time to think about this subject. We're gonna have a nice little discussion on this one, folks. Let's give it another minute or two. So right now it is Easter Sunday. Wherever you're at, hope you're having a safe Easter Sunday. Hope you enjoyed family time. Hope you enjoyed your day at church or whatever it is you did doing with your Easter Sunday this year. Hope you've enjoyed it. So happy Easter to everyone while listening to this. If you're catching this on the replay afterward, I hope you had a great Easter Sunday. So yeah, we're going to give it another minute. And also right now we got, since it is Sunday, we got the Women's National Championship games being played right now. UCLA is playing South Carolina. It's in the fourth quarter. UCLA is up big, so that game's probably going to be over soon. And then tomorrow we got the men's game, of course, UConn versus Michigan. So they'll definitely talk about that on the 3-point blitz on Tuesday. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, we'll give another minute or so and we'll get down to it. So, oh boy, Jaden Ivey. That's a great example of sometimes you're best off just keeping your mouth shut. Now, I talked about it. I said that what Jaden Ivey said was stupid. And ultimately, it was. Because look what happens in the fallout since. First, he got cut by the Bulls. He got waived. Then, a lot of his family members aren't really talking with him. So, he's lost a lot in just a whole week. Now, I get it. And, there is freedom of speech is a thing. Hello, what's up, Grega? I get it. Jaden Ivey has the right to believe what he wants to believe, but we also got to remember there are consequences that come along with saying certain things that might be unpopular. Now, in his case, you're talking about Jaden Ivey, who openly went after the NBA for celebrating Pride Month, A. Number two, their parent league is the WNBA. They're partners with them, which, newsflash, Jaden Ivey, a good portion of those players are lesbians. So, you've offended a pretty good portion of the WNBA players with your comment when the NBA partners with them. You had Brittany Griner, you had Sue Bird, Dawn Staley, the coach for South Carolina, which reminded me of that because the game's going on right now. But newsflash there. So you offended a good portion of their players. Not to mention, you took a direct shot at your organization, the NBA, celebrating Pride Month, which that's not a good idea to do that, especially for Jaden Ivey, who, mind you, is really a mid-tier player. I mean, you're not a superstar, number one. And when you're not a superstar, if you say something that's unpopular, especially within your organization, or you're not producing, they're going to get rid of you as quickly. They're going to get rid of you right away. And I remember on the Pick and Roll podcast, the most recent episode, Rios, Coach Ed, Mitch Blaze talked about this. Particularly, Coach talked about the one color that always goes around the corporate world is the color green, as in the money trail. And what that means basically is if you're a star or you're a big name star, you have more leeway to make controversial comments or give unpopular takes that don't go over well and still keep your job and still get featured heavily if you're a star and you're still producing money. And there's plenty of examples, I repeat, plenty of examples of players or, athletes, media figures who draw ratings, but they get passes because they're popular. They're a draw. Sure, what they said didn't go over well, but perfect example. You see a guy, I can name numerous athletes recently that are still active in their sport that have gotten heat for some of their opinions, but still have their job, like Harrison Buckner. His stances on birthrights issues. He gave an unpopular take. He got a lot of heat from people for his stance, but ultimately, despite the criticism, he still keeps his job because Kansas City feels he's a valuable kicker. So through it all, Harrison Buckner may have gotten backlash from fans, but he still ultimately had his job and still has more money than most of his critics. So he didn't get cut because he gave an unpopular take. Or remember Kyrie Irving. Remember a few years back with Kyrie Irving, his remarks, a lot of people from the Jewish community got offended. This was late 2021 going into 2022, remember? And ultimately, Kyrie got suspended. He didn't get let go. He still got suspended because the NBA was like, all right, we got to give Kyrie something. A lot of people got offended, and that can include some of our own paying customers, possible players, coaches across our league, or executives across the league may have been offended. So the NBA decided, all right, we don't want to blackball Kyrie completely, but we got to at least give him some punishment. So he got the suspension. So sometimes if you're a star, you might get some punishment, may get fines or suspensions, but you're still ultimately going to get to keep your job if you're a star. You're not getting blackballed. Jaden Ivey's pretty much, don't be shocked if his NBA career is over now, because Ivey was just a mid-tier center. A lot of teams are just like, look, mid-tier center, yeah, we can replace you and get rid of you and find a new mid-tier backup center anytime. I mean, you could easily just find one in the draft at least, or go find somebody in free agency that produces similar statistics to a Jaden Ivey. And for the Chicago Bulls, whose season's over anyway, what do they really got to lose? They're in a deep rebuild, and they're looking around. They know Jaden Ivey was just a short-term player anyway. The last thing they want is a short-term player that they can easily replace that's going to bring some negative press or might stir up some conflict in the locker room, or might offend some fans. So they're just like, nah, we're good. We'll get rid of you. It's like, look, whatever religion you support, whatever you believe, you have the right to believe it, but there's still consequences for making controversial remarks. Especially when you're not getting paid to give your opinion. Yeah, there can still be those repercussions for it. And Jaden Ivey's finding that out the hard way right now. And you see, another perfect example, since we're talking about Kyrie Irving. Remember, he made the controversial remarks? Remember Myers Leonard, the former Miami Heat Portland Trailblazer? Remember, he was on a live stream playing, I believe it was COD, Call of Duty, and he made a remark that offended the same group of people that Kyrie did. Now, granted, Myers Leonard's remark was worse and was more offensive to that group, referring to the Jewish community, but because Myers Leonard was not a star, he was just a mid-tier player that teams are like, oh yeah, we can find another Myers Leonard easily. And the Miami Heat were like, oh yeah, we could easily find another player with similar skill set to him, maybe even someone that's better with a similar skill set. We don't need him. We don't need the trouble that comes with it. So they ultimately let him go, and yeah, Myers Leonard's been out of the NBA since. So yeah, so there's that too. If you're not a star, if you're a Jaden Ivey or a Myers Leonard and you don't have you're not a top jersey seller, you're just a player on the roster, yeah, you don't have as much lead room to run your mouth off or say things that could be controversial and still keep your job and still keep some income. Yes, I mean, there have been star players who've given controversial takes on political or social issues that didn't go over well. They may have lost a few endorsements, but ultimately they still had big money opportunities. Or another example, let's go back a decade ago. You had, remember, man, you know, guys know who Manny Pacquiao is. He made some controversial remarks comparing the LGBT community to animals. You know, I'm not going to repeat the full remark. He did lose his deal with Nike in the short term, but because he was a big star and a money drawer in the boxing world, he didn't lose his boxing license. He still got fights. People still watched him. See, that's the thing. You can give unpopular opinions or offend people if you're a star and still get mild punishment compared to stars. Compared to guys like Jaden Ivey, who are nobodies, basically. And so there's that, too. And also, and it's stupid, well, in terms of what Jaden Ivey said itself. That man's gonna believe what he's gonna believe anyway, whether we like it or not. But when you're just a mid-tier player, you don't have a lot of pull in the NBA. You don't have a lot of room to talk about things that the NBA openly supports, whether you agree or disagree with it. Mind you, Jaden Ivey does not really have seniority in the NBA. He's not a big name. Fans know who he is, but he's not a name that people are tuning in to watch play. They're not going to the United Center to watch the Chicago Bulls play to see him. If they are going to United Center, they're just going for a night out at this point, just to see live basketball while they had the chance. Because there's no superstars currently in the Bulls roster that people are paying to see. They don't have Michael Jordan or even Derrick Rose when he was at his peak in Chicago. Or hell, even Dwayne Wade during that 1 year he was in Chicago because that was his hometown area-ish. Or even a Jimmy Butler. They don't have anyone that people necessarily want to see play. So for Jaden Ivey, who's just really a name on a roster, yeah, if you make a comment that's unpopular and you directly attack the league and the front office doesn't like it, yeah, they could kind of push you out the door. Now, let's be honest about this. It's not just in the sports world, too. It's all walks of entertainment. In all jobs, in the NBA, it's a business, just like any other company out there. For these guys that play, or these girls in the women's league, whatever the case may be, they're still working. It's still a job for them at the professional level. It's sporting career, but it's still a job, and just like any other business, people that produce get a little more leeway to act up or maybe do something that may not go over well than do people that don't produce that much. You look at those you guys at your jobs, you've probably seen it before too. Either experienced it directly or you've seen it going on around you. Sometimes, because let's face it, all businesses in the world, sports teams that are professional with paid professionals, office jobs, customer service jobs, whatever the case may be, warehouses, one thing these companies all have in common is, to some degree or another, there's going to be some politics and some favoritism in all companies. Even our dream jobs have some degree of favoritism. Some companies do it more than others, but the one thing that comes with them all to some degree playing favorites is the people that help the company the most have more leeway to make mistakes than those that can be replaced. And Jaden Ivey and the Chicago Bulls fit that category of, here's a guy that can be replaced. So if he said something foolish, they can just say, you know what, we don't like what he has to say. We don't necessarily need him. We're going to move on. And it's not just, it's the same thing in all walks too. Like you could use on the sports world many examples, like Adrian Peterson and Ray Rice. Ultimately, between Adrian Peterson and Ray Rice, the Baltimore Ravens felt they could easily get another running back of Ray Rice's caliber. So ultimately, that's part of the reason they let him go. Yes, they also did let him go because they saw the video and they didn't like the behavior he displayed, but part of the reason Ray Rice got let go is because the Ravens felt they could always find another running back his tier. But then you take a look at Adrian Peterson, who was a superstar, former MVP, a game changer for the Vikings. They knew that the league had to suspend him, but they were willing to bring him back because he could still help out on the field. He came back the following year, had another really good season. So that's why the Vikings kept him. But ultimately, so there's that factor. And it's the same thing at all businesses. Sports is just the same. I'm sure everyone listening to this, at your job, you might know that coworker that's productive that may have said or done something foolish that another coworker who doesn't have the same level of seniority with the management, who doesn't produce as well, isn't going to get as much of a pass for it, or it's not going to go over so favorably. Especially if the employee's already on management's bad side, too. So, there's always going to be that factor. And if you're an athlete, it's no different than it is at a regular job in that regard. Like I said, a guy like Adrian Peterson, he got a second chance after a season-long suspension in Minnesota, and he still got to play. And then late in his career, teams still picked him up. Maybe to help sell a few tickets, maybe use him as a number 2 back in short yard situations, but because Adrian Peterson was a star, he ultimately got chance after chance after chance after chance. Now, a guy like Ray Rice, who teams felt, okay, he was a mid-tier back, they didn't want to pay him that much money, they ultimately didn't bring him back. Or Colin Kaepernick's another perfect example, too. I'm telling you, had it been a starting quarterback who did that, he would have still had a job in the NFL until he was no longer producing. Trust me, if that had been Cam Newton, fresh off his MVP season, he still would have probably finished his career on a similar note had he been the one that did the Kaepernick kneel, because ultimately he was fresh off an MVP season. He was a star. But because it was Colin Kaepernick, who was considered a mediocre at best backup quarterback, teams just said, nah, we're good. We don't want to deal with the negative press of it. We'll find another backup quarterback. So there's always going to be that factor too. Perfect example, as far as the activist goes, go back years to when Muhammad Ali refused to go to Vietnam. Now, in the years since, it's become very popular. People have praised him for it, but at the time, a lot of people in power wanted nothing to do with him at first, but eventually, because Ali was still a big draw, they're like, all right, we'll give him his boxing license back, and they reluctantly let him return to the sport. But that's because he was a big draw. Or even sometimes Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was an activist. He may have said some things that some fans didn't like, but because he was a big star, ultimately he had more leadway through it. Now, I'm not saying who's right and who's wrong in this case, but the point is, anytime people give public stances that might ruffle feathers, whether you agree or disagree with what they say personally, the bottom line is, when you're a star, you're a money draw, you have more room to get passes. Or even not just them, but in the cases where people do things that are just generally wrong that there's no debate on, like Adrian Peterson, I said. Or even see Mike Tyson, when he bit Evander Holyfield's ear, he had his license suspended for about a year, but was allowed to return because they could still make money off his name, and he was still a draw. They could still sell tickets and get people to buy pay-per-views. So ultimately, he was able to return. But make no mistake, if there had been some jabroni on the undercard who nobody really knew, trust me, he wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to redeem himself the way Tyson did. So it just, you look at all sports or all walks of life, people who are draws get more opportunities and they get more free passes. And it could go on and on. You could look at Hollywood and name a lot of different people. Guys like Mel Gibson. He's had a ton of controversies over the years. He's had some issues with domestic violence. He's been accused. He's had numerous accidents of racist remarks. But yet Mel Gibson was still able to get cast because he was a star and that people felt he could draw and sell tickets to the movie theater and get people to buy movies. So ultimately he got a pass for it. And that's just the way you can look at all walks of life. People ultimately, hey, the politics side of it is the green, really, the money. If you're still producing, if you're still getting people to buy your product, hey, if you're still selling tickets, hey, you're going to get more passes than those that don't. So ultimately, that's what it boils down to when it comes to Jaden Ivey. So, but that's a lesson a lot of people got to learn right there. So just remember, the key lesson in all this is when you speak, you do have the right to believe what you want to believe, but think about where your organization stands on it. If you put this message out publicly and it's something that isn't going to be agreed upon, you could still face consequences for it. You could ultimately lose your job. You could lose your career in some cases. It does happen. Especially if it's just something that's blatantly awful. Now, in some cases, there's no debating at all. If you guys know who Michael Richards, the actor, is, the guy who played Kramer on Seinfeld. If you don't know, he was playing Michael Richards he played on the sitcom, played Kramer, the main characters on Seinfeld. After that, he went back to stand-up comedy. At one of his shows in like 2006 or 7 in the early camcorder years, he got heckled, particularly by a black man in the audience, and he unleashed a huge racist rant using the N-word numerous times, and that was one of those everyone agreed, this guy's trouble, stay away from him. Now that was a clear-cut example of he was completely in the wrong, and rightfully people lost respect for him. I mean, that's not even up for debate in that case. That was just, and some of the stuff he said in that rant, I'm not going to repeat it, but not only did he use the N-word, he used numerous other graphic references to the heckler in return that are inexcusable to say. And in the case of Jaden Ivey, look, his thing is not as severe. Now, he did make controversial remarks. He did include his religious faith, which he has the right to believe. But you got to remember, though, again, with the NBA, them celebrating Pride Month, them partnering with the WNBA, I'm sure there were players in the WNBA that were offended. So, for a guy like a Jaden Ivey who doesn't have much seniority at all in the NBA world, yeah, you're going to face the consequences for this a lot harder than a star would have. Like, had this been, say, a LeBron or a Jalen Brunson or a Luka or just someone of those regards, let's just say, they probably would have gotten suspended over the backlash for it, but they wouldn't have gotten cut from the team. So remember, folks, whatever you do in your life, at your job, whether you're a content creator and you're monetized to do it, whatever the case may be, you say the wrong thing or you say something that could be offensive, it could cost you everything. So think twice before you speak. If you know it's not going to go over well, you might want to keep it to yourself, not say it out loud, and just go about your day. And unfortunately, a guy like Jaden Ivey's learned that the hard way, but yeah, so he might just very well be done. And As well, speaking of done, the women's game is done. UCLA beat South Carolina, so that means tomorrow's the men's game to close off this March Madness season with UConn versus Michigan. So that'll be tomorrow to close. I may go live for that one. I might. I'm still thinking about whether I want to or not, but I might go live for that one. So, yeah, there's that. And we're in the home stretch for the NBA playoffs, so that means come Tuesday on the 3-Point Blitz, episode 54, your boy's definitely going to sit down and talk about it, and looking forward to it because it's going to be a fun discussion. And by the way, for those that tune into everything on the table with me at Agent Warrior X, Agent won't be available this Tuesday because he's got to work at Yankee Stadium, and he's not available next Tuesday either. So I'll still do something at that same time slot, but it's not going to be the Everything on the Table show. I'll probably do a tier ranker around that time. So I'll still be live Tuesday night, just not with Agent, and I'll still be live for the 3-Point Blitz at noon like I am every Tuesday. So you guys be on the lookout for that. But any note, man, hope you've had a great Easter Sunday and hope you enjoy the rest of your night. And until next time, folks, peace. It's your boy Nicky Steve signing off. Have a great rest of your Easter, and I'll catch y'all later.